So, welcome back to another tournament coverage. This time it's a bit different. We have recorded the videos of the top 8 yesterday of our event in Darmstadt, the 5th National Lounge League. And Kinnan, the winner of this event, played on camera for 3 rounds. So I've decided to just pick 3 games of the best of 3s and tell you something about that and give a few insights on the matches. It's a bit different than to what you're used to. Usually we are commenting on events in our live stream. Unfortunately we can't provide a live stream yet because the internet over there is very bad. Otherwise we would have set up something similar actually. Nevertheless, you can tell me if you like it. Write it down in the comments. Give us some feedback about that. I would really appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe our channel if you want to have more Duel Commander content. So, this is the first round in the quarterfinals. There's Kinnan, as I said, and it's actually me playing Marath. I played a mid-rangey variant, and I was not too excited about this matchup. I haven't practiced it at all, since I would have not expected anyone to run Kinnan currently, although, as he proved yesterday, it's still a powerful deck. The problem for Marath in this case is that even if you shut down Kinnan or a few of his dorks, there are still a couple of rocks and other mana artifacts left. Other mana artifacts beside rocks, well, there isn't that much. But yeah, it kind of does some silly stuff with 6, 7, 8 mana whatsoever, like casting a Primeval Titan on turn 3 and stuff like this is nothing you can really deal with unless you have some cards like Basilisk Collar, for example, that can ping down big creatures. But in general, Kinnan does some cheesy stuff with a lot of mana. There are some upheaval lines that can really drawback your whole setup. And right now we see a Sylvan Library, a Walking Ballista, and a bird. And I started with a dork into Marath, which is, so far, it's a good position for me, since I can use my mana to ping down his creatures. It's a bit unfortunate with the Ballista. I mean, he can react to it and kill my own dork, but I think that's alright. So I've just thought about this line of play for a moment, and I have to get rid of the Ballista in order to attack with Marath. And I'm quite sure that he's not going to block with his bird. If so, I'm completely happy about it. And as I expected, he does not. I also have a Ren and 6 in hand, which I'm going to use to ping down the bird. I think I had enough lands in hand, and it's really about getting the board under control and denying your opponent from committing to any shenanigans. And we see a Winter Orb in his hand and a Tanglewire. Tanglewire is problematic, but I can somehow play around it if I create some elementals that I can tap, but it costs mana, and usually I want to keep the counters on Marath to ping down his creatures. And it's a bit tricky overall because, I mean, he's playing a combo deck. He can, if he has access to Basalt Monolith or Retrofitter Foundry, or actually Retrofitter Foundry is one way to finish the game with Basalt Monolith, but there are a couple of ways to produce infinite mana. He also plays the Sylvan Kayatid and Freed from the Real or Paman's Aura combo, which also grants infinite mana, and the deck has a few ways to finish the game. And since I can't really prepare for that, unless I have some Court of Calling lines that result in Aven Mind Sensor, for example, to deny his Tudor, I really need to be fast. So the Tangle Wire is a perfect play here for him. Takes away my mana and the creatures I have on board. So he's at 10. That's actually in range for me to finish the game, but it's tough now that the Tangle Wire is on board. He has a Boseiju on board. I would like to have that in hand instead of, or any other solution for the Tangle Wire would be great. The Lion Sash is kind of a dead card, unless there's one line if he goes for infinite mana and, for example, Walking Ballista is in graveyard right now, so exiling the Ballista is not bad. I don't have his complete list in mind, but I'm sure there's a different way of going off out of Urza. Besides, of course, there's Retrofitter Foundry. I forgot about the Foundry. So it takes another turn, but yeah, I have to have a big Marath in order to shoot him for 10 currently, which is not possible. But overall, the cards in my hand didn't really line up against him. I decided to get rid of Kinnan. There are 2 artifacts on board currently, the Signet and the Mox Amber. Mox Amber is now shut down, but can be turned on again by an Oko. That's, yeah, I have a Fury in hand, and maybe, I'm not sure if I have the Fury in hand at that point. Yeah, I do. So if there's any chance of casting Fury next turn and dealing 2 damage to Oko, I can get the situation under control. But that's quite unlikely, since I still have to tap 3 permanents. And Renin 6 secures my 5th land drop for Fury. Either way, it won't be enough. I have to tap at least 1 more land, since I only have 2 creatures. But it is how it is. Oko is a powerful card. Not yet game winning for him, but it stalls the game to his advantage in combination with the Tangle Wire. Food tokens are also very, very good to tap them down. The Giver of Runes is kind of useless in this situation. Yeah, so his plan right now would probably be to grow some foods, grow Oko, and eventually even trade some food tokens for higher value creatures that I put onto the battlefield. And I'm thinking of using Marath's last counter end of turn, and I produce an elemental. So there's another trigger. that I should first decide about. I mean, there's really not much I can do. So I decide to keep the Giver. I have an Elite Spellbinder in hand, I guess. There's a Flawless Maneuver, or the Spellbinder comes off top. That's a bit of a cheesy situation, I have to admit, because I saw the Spellbinder first. Either way, I think I'm not sure if there's a world in which he's actually committing to food or elk the Spellbinder, since he will just tick up Oko, and no matter what, he will be completely out of range for me to beat him down. So I decide to take the Winter Orb, but it's not really... doesn't really change anything. I mean, he can still play it for 4, and then he has Simic Signet left. Mox Ember is not yet active, but yeah, let's see. I think at this time he draws a Sim C3 creature, and he can look at the top 3. There you see an Urza and a Thragtusk. Urza is definitely a nice one. Especially with the food tokens. There are so many artifacts on board. And then he can simply play Urza and play the Orb. And end of turn he just taps the Orb for mana and he has a full untap. While I'm still stuck on X lands. Tanglewire and Orb is especially a nice combination. So at this point it already looks very bad for me. And there is Urza. Mox Ember is active because of Oko. I just said something else that's wrong. There's a big token, currently 5/5, 6/6 even, with the Tanglewire and a food token. And there's a Tree of Tails and Mox Ember and a Simic Signet. And if there's a Winter Orb, then it even gets more. So he can make another food token. That's a perfect setup for the game. So this is... I wouldn't say that's the is it like what's the usual way of Kinnan winning games? You would rather think about some combo-ish lines, but that's how to grind out your opponent with some stacksy interactions. And as we all know, Urza is a very powerful card, especially with food-producing cards. And yeah, it's interesting. He even decides to sacrifice Urza to find an Elder Gargaroth. Another big creature that I have huge troubles dealing with. So I could give protection to my Elite Spellbinder with Giver of Runes for once, but it doesn't really change anything. Like, even if I handle Oko, now I have to deal with the Gargaroth, and there is a big construct as well, and I'm on 17. And yeah, compared to what my opponent is doing, I'm playing the fair deck here. So at this point, I already think about resigning the game. This is the first round, by the way, or the first match. My options are to take up Renin 6 now to get back a fetch land and just hardcast Fury. After I attack with Elite Spellbinder, And he will. I mean, he doesn't. He probably does not have Fury in mind, so there's no reason to not block the Spellbinder with Elder Gagarov, especially because he gets a trigger. And after I find my 5th land, I attack with the Spellbinder. And first he takes the damage, and then he says, wait, there's Gagarov. We're not that... I mean, we're not that strict in top 8 anymore. The way towards top 8 we are, but once we arrived, it's more of a chilled come together. I mean, still competitive, of course. For most players, reaching top 8 is the goal. And here we go. He blocks. He makes a token. I roast it. Not really realizing that Oko is at 8 at this point, and he can trade Oko for a food token. Not Oko, I mean Fury. So yeah, that's what he's about to do. And then there is still a construct on board, which is currently still 6/6, 7 with the Tangle Wire. And there is a beast, and it's not looking good, especially after he plans to get rid of my Fury, my only powerful blocker right now, which is not even able to deal with the construct, unfortunately, because there's so many artifacts on battlefield. Now my opponent brainstorms, and I think he saw a Basalt Monolith, so he could even... yeah, he could think about doing infinite mana, but it doesn't really help unless he decides to activate Kinnan's ability 1 or 2 times to maybe find a Thrasios, for example, in the top 7. Yeah, and he's changing the food token for Fury. But even if he would not do that, now I have a food token that gets me up to 19 and as a double strike plus 7. And at this point I decided to go to round 2, which I lost as well against turn 3 Primeval Titan. So we go on to the semifinal, which is now Marcus playing Gitrog against Kinnan. And since Kinnan is on the first place prior to top 8, he's always starting the game. And there is a turn 2 Kinnan with a Lotus Petal. Marcus is fetching for a forest probably. And I think there was a Witherbloom command played. Not quite sure, because it doesn't deal with Kinnan, unfortunately. Collective Brutality would be better, but it deals with Lotus Petal. And he returns the land, I guess, after milling 3 cards. There's an Exploration and a Dark Ritual. Okay. Yeah, I think it's interesting to include the Lotus Petal, probably because it gives the decks a bit more explosiveness. Which definitely overwhelms a couple of decks. that are not able to handle Kinnan quickly. And there's a Bloom Tender. The beautiful Bloom Tender. Another fetch from Marcus. Yeah, and the hand really has to be set up with a lot of counter spells. So now he wants to have double black. Maybe he has a Dismember in hand to get rid of Kinnan. Basically, this matchup is completely different from other... Ah, and there's a Toxic, that's great. Deals with both creatures at once. But basically, this matchup is about who is going to enable his combo earlier. And I would say it's rather favored for the Kinnan players, since it's just much more fast. And as we saw in the first round against Marath, it's also capable of stalling the situation to your favor until you finally find your resources to go off. And that's something Gitrog can deny by casting spells like Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy and stuff like this. Getting rid of a Tangle Wire, for example. It's not too bad. But there are other things to watch out for as well. And there's a Maelstrom Pulse for Jace, that's quite good. We have an Academy Runes. And a Wild Growth on an island. So there's a Court of Calling left and a Sylvan Library. There's no point to cast Kinnan again. So I would cast the library as well. And he fetches again. Marcus is already down to 11, and I think, if I haven't missed something, it was the Toxic, it was a Shock, 3 times fetch. That's 7. And there are another 2. Maybe Kinnan connected once. Either way, yet the board looks quite balanced. And there is a Consecrated Strings. That's surprising, but it's a non-creature spell. A non-human creature spell. Because Kinnan's ability needs to find non-humans. And it seems that Marcus made the mistake to let the swings resolve and end of turn cycling his Baronmoor, which draws 2 cards. And then he draws another 2 cards, and he's almost a refill. Like drawing 4 cards of the swings is quite nice. And he casted a Regrowth to get back a Maelstrom Pulse, dealing with the swings. And yeah, it's quite annoying for Marcus as a Gitrog player who wants to get down the frog, but there is no time window to play it, because he's always busy with reacting to his opponent's plays. And now there is a Fabricate searching for a Basalt Monolith, which he is going to play already, as well as a Springleaf Drum. So there's a situation in which I think it would have been better for Marcus to, let me check, to not lose the game, but that's not correct. He has a Shred Memory in hand, so yeah, his mana situation is quite a bit awkward. Even if he would transmute, there's nothing left to interact with Kinnan, but also if he would search for a Heartless Act, for example, or go for the throat, something like that. In response to playing the Heartless Act, his opponent could still pay 3 mana with the current mana situation, even more because he has Kinnan and Springleaf Drum. Could still pay 3 mana to untap the Basalt Monolith, and then still loop the mana in. Since you tap Basalt Monolith, and then you have the trigger, and then you pay 3 mana to activate its untap ability, and that's the time window in which you can interact and destroy Kinnan to not let him net infinite mana. But as I just explained, there is more mana on the battlefield. And now he has a couple of options. He can either court, he has also an Emrakul on the board, in his hand, and he plays Emrakul, and Marcus just says, yeah, that's it. Fair enough, you got the game. So the second round is again won by Kinnan as well, by a fast combo. I think it was, yeah, it was like this. It was a Titan against me, and here it was a fast combo with which Marcus couldn't interact, and now he's in the finals against Sai. And maybe it was wrong. Maybe Christopher was not the first one. Maybe it was second or third, because now Sai started. No, he never mind. He started because that's the second game. So the first round was a fast win with Urza on board into exiling his whole library by order, and he played a Walking Ballista for 0, and then he played an Eternal Witness, getting back Walking Ballista, and since he has infinite mana, he just played the Ballista and killed him. And there is a turn 2 Sylvan Kayatit. That was quite an interesting Silas, by the way, I have to say. I haven't seen this commander for ages, it feels like. But recently it gained a lot of tools, and we were thinking about showing it again on the channel a couple of times already. It takes some time to get into the list and yeah, design a proper list to show, so yet we didn't take the time to do that, but Ben did it. Ben did it for us, and we might show it in the future. He's usually playing Archon, so his list was also designed for Archon, and we talked about it later on, and he said that he basically just cutted Ancient Tomb and Mox Opal, both cards that are legal in Archon, and kept the list as it is, pretty much. And from his experience yesterday, he would have added more CMC2 counterspells. Nevertheless, he made it to the finals, so seemed to work out anyways. Yeah, it's quite interesting. There is a Sai on board with a Springleaf Drum and a Winter Orb. Winter Orb, since Kinnan is playing it on his own, it's not the best card against Kinnan. There are a lot of ways to come around. And we see a Basalt Monolith and a Fabricate again in his hand. And it seems that Ben's best play is to cast Sai, hoping to find some artifacts, maybe stall the board a bit more, getting some damage done by Topters. But he's also at 3 cards in hand. And now the Kinnan player is thinking about what to do next. There could be a counterspell for for Kinnan. I mean, what he could do is, if he would have a Walking Ballista in hand, which he obviously doesn't, otherwise I would have expected him to do the play instantly, so to say. He could simply cast Kinnan for 2 mana, and then cast the Basalt Monolith, make infinite mana, if everything resolves. But now he just decides to play Kinnan with the Sylvan Caryatid to not tap too much mana and get some mana out of his lands that are tapped by Winter Orb. And we see a Tectonic Edge destroying a tropical island. Less mana for the mana intensive deck is good. We have a fetch from Polluted Delta. Going for an island, I guess. And now it's kind of free. He can just play the Monolith, make infinite mana, pay 1 more blue to cast Fabricate, search Retrofit or Foundry, and then make a huge board with a lot of 4/4 constructs, by the way. But Ben has a Force of Negation, which is quite a good card here, since Kinnan has some options to get back Basalt Monolith, for example, Eternal Witness. And I'm not sure if he plays anything else, but Witness is fine already because the deck has a couple of ways to tutor for it. So the Force of Negation takes care of that. There is an attack from Kinnan, and he played a Sanctum Weaver. And this is a scary one because it can combo with cards like Pamin's Aura or Freed from the Real, as well as the Sylvan Caryatid, by the way, as long as Kinnan sticks to the board. And there is an Inventor's Fair and a Jeweled Amulet, so not the best draw for the side player here. And I think that was a lucky top deck, because yeah, he now knows the side player has nothing in hand, and he can just tap 1 land and a Sanctum Weaver to do 2 mana, and here we go. So the Sylvan Caryatid has hexproof. Side player can't interact anymore. And that's it. That's how Kinnan won the game. Or won the tournament, actually.